Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Darting Around podcast. It's a special episode today. It's footy fans' Christmas time. Finals is upon us. My name is Jesse Dart, joined as always by Jaden Griffin. And Jaden, very excited tonight. We have our first ever final series episode. Our final series with a bit of a twist this year, I'd say, but certainly some good footy ahead of us.
Oh yeah, it should be really, really good. We've got a few teams we probably wouldn't have picked to make the finals at the start of the year, and also a few people probably a little lower than you would have expected. Should be really good.
It's going to be an interesting campaign for sure. Probably 5 teams, I would say, this year that could conceivably win it. So that's probably a good thing to start with, is that there's a stronger pool than we've had in some years.
Yeah, I think there's probably not really been any super dominance this year. There's been a real tussle at the top, which is everyone very close in points to. Which I think is really, really good for footy.
I mean, I think, to quote the markets currently for the premiership at the moment, it's about $5 the field. So it really is tough to pick a winner. You see, obviously,
wow, really, that high?
It's pretty spread out across the kind of the 5 main contenders. I mean, teams are kind of coming up. I think West Coast was $5.50 at one stage. They've obviously gone out since the Brisbane hub. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Also, before we start as well, Caleb Sarong, Rising Star, winning, just announced. Good player.
Well deserved. He had an amazing season. Wasn't really sold on him early, and then had a few breakout games. And I probably didn't rate him initially, and then he just kept doing it. So yeah, very, very, very impressive, and certainly well deserved.
And look, we'll do a bit of a deep dive on the All-Australian team as well another day. But just first, couple of first timers getting in, a couple of players that probably don't play in the position they were selected. But I mean, I've seen worse choices, I think, at certain points in my time.
Yeah, I think the All-Australian team is one of those, isn't it? There's always going to be a few picks that are a bit questionable. I thought the 40 list this year was quite bad, actually. I thought a few people missed out who probably should have been in there. But the overall final 22, I thought I don't have too many issues with it.
Yeah, well, look, without much further ado, we'll get straight into things now. So we're going to go through the teams in our reverse order, so from 8th to 1st. Talk about, I kind of guess, their season and how far we think they can go in the finals. We'll start with 8th, which is Collingwood. Probably not a name I would associate with 8th place, March 2020. Of course, not many things that we know now would be associated with at the time, but I think certainly a big disappointment for the Pies this year.
Yeah, no doubt. They were going in, I would have only really been happy with top 4 if I was going in as Collingwood, because they have such a good list, an ageing list too, a lot of finals experience. Not 100% sold on Buckley, but I think he's had enough time at the club now to really mould that team into what he wants. And so I don't think there's any excuse for them to be this low given the talent that is on their list.
One thing I will say in the Pies' defence, DeGoey missed a lot of footy this year. Pendlebury missed a lot of footy this year.
Yeah.
Stevenson missed some footy this year. Sidebottom missed some footy this year due to his personal indiscretions. But, that's essentially, minus Treloar, their best midfielder. I do think DeGoey and Stevenson do play a role in the midfield rotation, which is what we've discussed off air before. But I think that's arguably 4 of the 6 best midfielders outside of Adams and Treloar not spending time on the park. It's pretty disruptive.
Oh, for sure. But it's a part of the game, isn't it? We've talked about previously how good Richmond have been with their injury management and how they haven't let it get to them too much. And that's what you've really got to be ready for. Especially when you've got such explosive players like DeGoey and Stevenson, I think that the way that they play the game is going to be tougher on their body.
Yeah,
and Pendlebury's also aging. You can't really expect Pendlebury to play the 22, well, obviously 17 this year, but, the full games each year. He will need his rest. I think a big attribution to it has been a bit of a Grundy fall off for me in this latter half of the season, which has really hurt them in the middle, because I don't think when Grundy's firing on all cylinders, you necessarily need all that power coming out of the midfield that they have, because he's basically just another midfielder who then takes the taps for you. But I did really see actually a bit of a decline in his second half of the year. Whether he's nursing an injury or he's struggling with his fitness, I'm not too sure. But I think that was a big factor. On top of having no real key forward, I think, is another thing that's hurt them.
And that brings me into 2 quick questions I want to just fire and get your opinion on straight away. Question 1, how badly has the lack of forward presence hurt them? And how much has losing Justin Longmuir to Fremantle in the coaching staff hurt them?
The key forward, I think, a lot. Like, with how good Pendlebury's ball use is, obviously they have Treloar, who kind of just puts it on his boot and hopes. but they do have some real, genuine good ball users. Sidebottom's another one who's generally good going inside 50, and not being able to really capitalise on that, having no really consistent good key forward, I think has definitely hurt them and hurt their scoring, and I think hurt their morale a bit when they get behind, because when you do have someone like, look at Richmond with anyone, Rewalt, Lynch, whoever, you can kick 4 quick goals, just 4 quick clearances straight to your key forward, they'll slot it through. Not having that is definitely would play on your mind, I think, for that team.
Does Collingwood need to throw the book? We'll come back to Long in a second. Does Collingwood need to throw the book in the off-season and getting a new key forward in?
It's hard because Pendlebury's going, is he not?
It looks like he's staying now. It's been 50-50.
If Pendlebury's staying another year, I think yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think they're not losing too much out. They have a very, very good squad that's, in my opinion, it's equipped to make a run at the Premiership. There's no reason it shouldn't be.
I can't disagree with that on paper, no.
And yeah, if the key forward is hurting them that much, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be throwing a blank check at somebody who is above competent.
Well, you've got to remember as well, Darcy Moore was brought in to be that key forward of the future, and look where he plays now.
Yeah, it's centre-half back.
Australian
centre-half back. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. So, yeah, that's definitely what I'd be doing about the key forward. And then I think losing Longmuir has hurt him a lot, actually. I think they look a lot more dysfunctional now this year in the footy that they play, comparatively to how I've seen previously. They're a lot more panicked, and it feels like they're relying a lot on those to-go-y key moments that used to just be icing on the cake, is now kind of integral to them having a good game, which scares me. I don't like it. What about you? What do you think about the Longmuir point?
Well, I think it's definitely had an impact. I don't think anyone would dispute the fact that it's had a big impact on the team's morale. I think defensively, Collingwood have still been quite good this season, apart from probably the Melbourne game is the one I can think of where they were poor defensively, and they probably really did show them up. But I thought, even in the games they lost, they've been, somewhat astute. I just think that Collingwood's big problem is that there's about 4 or 5 players in that team. I'll use Dacos as an example here, who are just complete passengers. Like, we're not playing Year 6 footy where it's 15 on 15. You have to have a squad of 22 players that just go in week in week. And yes, the injuries, do account for that. But like we've said before about Richmond on this show, you need to have a lot of depth. And right now, Collingwood don't have that. I think their window's gone. Sadly, I really do.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. This year felt perfectly set up for them to really prove that they're still a contender. And
they looked like they were going to. At points of the season, Collingwood were arguably the best team in the competition for, 2-3 week bursts. Probably twice before round 10, they were in that zone where they were the best team in the competition for me. But they're just not translating this into a consistent season of footy. One thing I want to say about them before we move on. Lost by a goal to West Coast in 2018. Lost by a goal to GWS in the 2019 prelim. They've been so close. Are they going to be one of the hard luck stories of the era?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably they don't beat Richmond, realistically, in 2019. That's fair. It's probably not going to be 90 points, though, I'd say. It's more of a... we said on the show, I'm pretty sure at the time, it's like maybe a 7-8 goal grand final.
Yeah.
Not a 15-16 goal grand final. But they probably do have to go down as a hard luck story because you just don't know if they get to the grand final. Do Richmond come completely unprepared for that? Is there demons from the previous year? Are they one of the hard luck stories of the year?
Yeah, I think so. Especially for me, blowing that 5-goal early start against West Coast. I don't even know if they've mentally repaired themselves from that, because I don't even like Collingwood, and that hurt me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Watching that as a neutral, I felt bad because they came out to play. They were ready. They came out firing on all cylinders, and it just didn't. Yeah, they couldn't close it out, and that would play on your mind. The
reason I brought up the hard luck stories is because our next team, has had their fair share over the years, and the team that also succeeds them in this list as well. The Western Bulldogs, probably weren't going to make the finals for a lot of this season. They were very inconsistent. But they've done what they needed to do. They've got into a position without having any kind of forward line, but the best midfield in the competition?
Oh, up there for sure. Hard to put them above even Eagles out of these bottom half of the top 8 teams.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put them above Eagles, but they're certainly a contender. Like McRae, Bontempelli, Lockie Hunter, Liberatore has even really found a bit of a revitalization towards the end of the season for me. He's played some absolute ripping games.
Bailey Smith.
Yeah, Bailey Smith has slotted in there absolutely beautifully as well. Their midfield is so well rounded. I just, like you said, I just wish they'd have a forward line.
I mean, we're going to see it against St Kilda, aren't they? They're going to absolutely murder them in the midfield, and they're just going to be kicking to Mitch Wallace for 2 hours, and no one's going to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not, for how little opportunity they get in front of goal, for me, they're not accurate enough.
No, they're not. They've got this psychology about them that they can't deliver mass scores.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably the best game they've had this season going forward was against Fremantle the other week.
Oh yeah, that actually was a pretty good game. They kicked straight that game as well, didn't they?
Yeah, but I will say that the Fremantle looked like they'd switched off in that game as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think any team is going to be switched off in the finals.
No, you wouldn't think so.
I think, especially for Dogs, they really want to come. It's the first time they've made it since 2016. Or
I believe so.
Yeah, I thought it was as well.
We'll get a fact check on that, but I'm pretty sure it is.
I mean, I just remember them sort of mentally collapsing after that 2016 grand final. And now they've sort of really struggled their way back into this top 8. I would not have picked them at the start of the year. I would not have picked them middle of the year. But I am happy for them, and I hope they do show up, because they have some genuinely very talented players. I think Caleb Daniel and Lockie Hunter are two people that have really impressed me this year. I thought they've both been phenomenal.
I know we said before that it's a 5-team race for the premiership, but if there's one team outside of the top 5 that could do it, I'd be pointing to the Bulldogs.
Well, 2016 they finished 7th too, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, so it could be on, mate. Could be on for a repeat.
It would certainly be quite a story. Look, we'll move on now to a team that, I mean, a lot of people have hyped them. I'm not on the hype train at all, personally. I don't think you can win a premiership with a bang average midfielder as your best midfielder, and I think it's, we'll talk about the All-Australians at a different time, but I don't think he was an All-Australian for me. It's like, camel dung looks tall when you put it next to dog poo. So it's a bit hard to really quantify Jack Steele. But St Kilda, it's going to be an 8-goal loss in the elimination final, isn't it?
I definitely think Dogs should be heavy favourites.
I just can't see the Saints winning.
Yeah, I think they have pulled out a few performances this year where I've genuinely been very surprised at the calibre of footy they are able to put together.
Port being the main example, I think.
Yeah, but on paper, they're just not an impressive list, are they?
They almost look like, they've climbed Mount Everest, and now all of a sudden they need to get down. Yeah. And they look really confused. It's like, okay, well, we thought we were going to die halfway up.
Yeah, well, in saying how impressed I have been at a few of their performances, they've also had some absolute head scratches and they've been picked apart by some pretty terrible teams, to be honest.
I mean, look what it did against Fremantle. They lost an 8-goal first quarter.
Yeah, and like you said, I think Steele has had a very, very good year, and I've been quite impressed with the way he's managed to break a tag, but he's not.
But then again, the taggers really take him seriously,
and that could definitely be it. And also, he's not as explosive, or he's not going to get your 40 touches that you need, and he's also not going to get your 20 contested touches. I just don't think he has that explosivity to really be the linchpin of a finals contender.
St Kilda, to me, are the old mantra of a champion team beats a team of champions, and honestly, they've done really well this season. I know I've ragged on them a bit here in this segment, but they do deserve, a nod and acknowledgement. In fact, they have had a great season.
They've overperformed out of their minds, haven't they? I also would have had them nowhere near the 8 at the start of the year.
Yeah, but my question is, would you not rather see Melbourne or GWS in the final series than them?
To be honest, after the end of the season, no thank you, GWS.
That's fair.
Melbourne, I could definitely see. I think if they could manage to sort of put themselves together a little bit, I think they would have been a nice smoky outsider for the premiership, which I can't say for St Kilda. I think St Kilda have massively overperformed, and if they continue to overperform, I still don't. And even if they do manage to knock off the Bullfrogs, I don't think that they go any further than that, because I just don't. I think they've almost been playing at their peak, and credit to them where credit's due. That's very, very impressive to keep up for the majority of a season. But it also means I just don't think they can do the finals this year.
And that's the point I wanted to raise that I spoke about as well earlier with other teams as well. Do they have much natural improvement left in them?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe with the draft picks and stuff, but I think it's going to take a big team reshuffle realistically. Like you said, Steele's going to need some help if they're going to be. Steele can't be your number one midfielder, I don't think, for a premiership winning midfield.
Did he even make our tier list?
Yeah, we actually did have him tier 2, but we might have had him tier 3.
Yeah, I think you had him tier 2, and I forced put him down to tier 3.
I think he was tier 3, deservedly, but
He arguably had a tier 2 season.
He has had a tier 2 season,
but again,
it's kind of come out of nowhere, hasn't it?
And like we talked about guys like Guthrie, the sample size isn't there to call them a tier 2 midfielder yet.
Yeah.
And we may be proven wrong. He might come out and average 25 touches and 2 goals next season.
How old is he, out of curiosity? Do you know?
Well, he's been around. He'd be at least 26, 27.
That's what I thought. It seems like quite a
He's been around for a few... It's such a... I think now that Stevens left, I think it's been such a almost random thing. And Dan Butler as well.
Yeah.
Like, the players that they have performing are definitely overperforming.
Yeah.
They don't have much more progression in them as a team, apart from Max King. And again, one Paddy McCartan type injury is all it takes with players like him. And we've said that before, is that I'm not going to buy into the King hype until they're physically more developed.
Yeah.
They can kick as many goals as they want next year. They're still 20 and still super lanky.
Yeah, well, look, how long's Hipwood been around for now? And how much did you hear about how great he was going to be when he bulked up?
Yeah.
And the man still looks like Slenderman.
Yeah, it's questionable. But look, St Kilda, I think we've seen a couple of lightning in a bottle teams recently, mainly Melbourne in 2018 being the main example. I think this is another lightning in a bottle team.
Yeah, I would agree. As I said, overperformed all year, managed to keep it up. Definitely credit where credit is due. But I'm very interested to see how they progress next year, because I can't imagine them improving. I hope they manage to stay the same for their supporters' sake. Saints supporters have had it pretty rough for a while. But yeah, no, I don't see them as a threat in this final series, unfortunately. The least dangerous team in this top 8 for me.
I agree. One team I'm really excited and interested to talk about here is West Coast. At times, they've been by far the best team in the competition. It just happened to be that time was a 6-week spell in WA. It helps.
Coincidental, isn't it?
It is. I mean, Fremantle had the exact same uptake, so But again, that's how it happens. But they have a premiership list. We know they have a premiership list. This is essentially the same list they had in 2018, plus Tim Kelly.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty handy improvement to make.
Yeah, exactly. You would, if you can have a list that's already contending and then add Tim Kelly to that, you are never going to say no. The man is an absolute beast. I think since our tier list, he's kind of come into that midfield a little bit better, I think, and maybe that's the injury to Yo, but he's really managed to carve his own space in there, and they have looked very, very dangerous and played some incredibly good footy this year. I'm not super sold on them, though, with the way that they've finished the season, personally.
They've wobbled. They were poor against North Melbourne, I thought. They haven't shown a lot since coming back to Brisbane. They obviously lost to the Bulldogs just. That's a potential finals matchup.
Yep.
If, potentially down the road. It could even be a grand final if things go weird.
Very weird.
And in that case, if it is a Western Bulldogs West Coast grand final in Brisbane, you still back the Bulldogs.
Yeah, again, I would have to... a lot would happen for us to get to that point.
So
we would have a lot more data to look at and how the Dogs and how the
but if the grand final's tomorrow, everything, and it's just all the teams drop dead except those two,
and it's in Brisbane,
and have to play it in Brisbane.
I'm backing the Dogs.
Yeah, that's fair. But I want to go through kind of their team now. Defensively, best in the competition.
Yeah, no question for me.
Midfield again, best in the competition.
Definitely up there. Like, you can make an extremely strong case for them. I think at worst they're third.
And forward line, best in the competition.
At worst they're second, right, to Richmond. Like, depending on Kennedy and Darling, and depending on Lynch and Rewell. And yeah, like they've got such good support in that forward line as well when it spills. I think Jamie Cripps is handy when he goes down there when he's not in the midfield. Fair
enough, Lynch and Rewell are probably better than Kennedy and Darling, but West Coast have a far more superior supporting cast than Richmond do.
No doubt in my mind. Oscar Allen going down there as well.
Ryan, even Patrick Shelley. Yeah. I don't mind Patrick Shelley. Waterman when he gets his opportunities. They just have players they have a conveyor belt of forward talent, West Coast.
They do, and one thing that's really impressed me with West Coast has been their accuracy.
Remember no Willie Riola this year either.
Yeah, and he's still to come back. Hopefully for him he comes back sometime soon. Yeah. But yeah, they just don't. If they are getting smashed and genuinely can't get inside 50s, the few that they do, they convert, and that's why they always hang around. We saw it a couple of weeks ago against North. North were up 22 inside 50s to like 5 or something.
Yeah, we were watching that game.
Like, we
it
were
was
watching that
incredible,
game.
Yeah,
and Eagles were still only 4 points down because North kicked 2-10 or something, and Eagles kicked 3 straight. Like, it was crazy.
West Coast have possibly the best winning culture in the AFL and have done for many years now, and it obviously pains me to say that, but they do have a very, very strong winning culture, and you know what? Maybe they do get it. Yes, they have to play another game than at least 2 of these teams, but they're good enough.
They are good enough, and they are someone that I could never really count out. And that's what I was saying with if it is a Dogs West Coast Grand Final and the whole season plays out, you will really have to see how both teams are playing, because they're just not someone you can count out. And even mid-game, like we saw in 2018 when Collingwood took that massive lead early and had all the momentum, they just believe in themselves and they believe in each other. And that's, like you said with the winning culture, that's so important to have, and something that not very many teams in the competition have.
Okay, so we'll go through the 4 teams that we've reached here. Elimination, semi, prelim, or grand. Collingwood?
Elimination.
It's tough, but yeah.
Yeah.
They're not beating West Coast,
No,
are they?
I don't think they are.
Western Bulldogs?
Oh, I think they win this week, and then I think they bow out. Personally,
I think they're a sneaky prelim chance, but I'll go with semi too.
Yeah, and that's only because of the way the bracket's fallen for me. Because they're going to play the loser of Brisbane and Richmond, and it's in Brisbane.
Yeah,
and that's the only reason. Maybe I can see them pipping a Port or a Geelong, but I just don't see them beating Brisbane in Brisbane or Richmond full stop.
No, that's fair. St Kilda, I think elimination.
Yeah, St Kilda, I think, lose this week.
I'll give it the toughest one of the whole list. West Coast.
Because I think West Coast can make prelim or grand for me, but they can also collapse and lose this week. But if I was going to if you had a gun to my head, I would probably say prelim.
It's tough, isn't it? It really is tough because that they're going to play the loser of Geelong Port in the semi. Is that right?
Yep.
You know, they can beat Geelong.
They can beat Geelong.
But then Geelong can beat them and Tim Kelly cries for the next 4 months.
But also, I think they beat Port, personally. I think
they've got the history against Port in the finals on their side.
And they're just the team that's played so much finals, haven't they? Even Tim Kelly, coming from Geelong, has played enough finals now. As someone who's in his very, very early in his career. And he played
plenty of finals at South too.
Yeah, exactly.
As unfortunate as that is.
I just think experience is going to shine through here, and it'll take a big performance from either Collingwood or the loser of that Geelong or Port game to knock them off.
They're a real chance, aren't they?
They are. As much as I hate to say
chance.
it, they are a real chance. Because I don't think with the... Like, we saw it... That stint in Brisbane, they played some absolutely disgusting football.
Oh, yeah.
They were not enjoyable to watch. And not that I counted them out. I kind of thought that they would be better at it. Because we know that they've always... Not always, but they've tended to sometimes struggle away from Perth, which is understandable. The travel's long. Like, no one likes to travel. The time difference, whatever.
It's the same reason that teams struggle when they come to Perth.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought with the way the hubs worked, that would have actually been really good for Eagles because they would have had a lot of time to adapt to the conditions. But it's gone the other way. They didn't look good in Brisbane at all. And this whole final series now is being played in Brisbane, where they've really struggled to string together a good 4 quarters of footy. But at the same time, it's Eagles who have... you can very rarely count them out of the finals at any point in the last, 15 years, really.
Yeah. They are a phenomenal dynasty, a phenomenal organisation, and they very well could surprise a few. I think I've written them off so far in the season.
Yeah, it's only really as I started thinking about this episode, actually, and I was thinking about the contenders for the finals, and I was like, you just can't count them out as painful as it is.
They're not a team you could put a line through.
No.
Right, look, we'll move on to the top 4 now. So a bit more meat on these bones, to say the least. Look, Geelong finishing 4th probably isn't great for them. I think it's a bit tough because they've been a better side than 4th, but you also can't put them above any of the teams either.
Well, I mean, they pip us instead of lose to us by 2 points. And sorry, that's Carlton. And does that put them second? That either lifts them to third or second. Like, that just shows how close they have been at the top of the ladder. It is probably a bit unfortunate they've finished fourth, but all four of these top four teams.
Is it fortunate as well at the same time? Because look how they're playing week 1 of finals.
Yeah, that's very true. We'll get to we'll get to Port Adelaide. I think this is almost Geelong's last hurrah, isn't it? With this list that has so consistently been very impressive in the regular season, and then just kind of died in the finals. They haven't managed to put a super convincing finals performance together in this Dangerfield era for me, and that's really unfortunate given the amount of talent they have on the list.
The last time I can think of is 2013. That was well before Dangerfield. Even then, they lost to Freo in the qualifying final.
Yeah.
That's the last time I can think of where I thought, hello, Geelong are a serious, bona fide chance within that September season. Obviously, last year they were fantastic for half the year.
And that's what I'm saying. They've had numerous top 4 finishes and pretty much been in the 8 every single year since Dangerfield joined. And they've never, and that's why it's hard for me now to put them as a higher chance than West Coast, even with the second chance and where they have finished and the football they played during the regular season, because time and time again they've just disappointed me come final series, and this is when you have to step up.
Part of me almost thinks this year will be different, though.
I hope it is.
There's a real part of me that in all seriousness says that Geelong are ready to win this, because I look at the teams in the top 4 with them. Obviously, I think for me, Richmond's the main danger. I think it's a Richmond-Geelong grand final this year. I really do. Yeah,
I think that's probably where I would be leaning for, purely because of evidence. It is Brisbane's now second time in the finals, so maybe they can pull something out. But I think those are the two. Those are the two out of these top 4 that I think are the most dangerous. And then obviously you can never count out West Coast.
That is true. So I'm looking at the bracket now for Geelong. So they'll play first versus 4th. If they win that, they take on the loser of the battle between 2nd and 3rd and 6th and 7th.
They take on the winner, you mean, of that game?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
they take on the winner of that.
Right, so they will either have...
Realistically, Brisbane or Richmond.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as
well. So it's not going to be Geelong-Richmond grand final unless Richmond win the prelim. So win the qualifying final.
Yeah.
So for that to happen, realistically, Geelong and Richmond need to win...
Need to both win this week.
Yeah.
And
then obviously both win their prelims too.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't rule it out.
No, it's definitely doable. I think they're two very, very dangerous teams, and I like I said, I'm trying not to put too much on previous years of how they've played. I hope they bring something different this year and really do manage to step up. But I just have seen so much evidence for some sort of finals collapse from them that I'm not super hopeful.
One thing I will say is if Geelong lose against Port, they're finished. Because then they take on probably West Coast.
Yeah.
And then if they manage to get in West Coast, they take on Richmond.
Yeah.
That's a brutal draw.
That is a death bracket.
Yeah.
That is an absolute death bracket. That is going to be an absolute brutal game week after week after week for them.
You're essentially playing 4 grand finals.
Exactly, and then they'll probably be completely spent by the time they make the grand final, especially with the aging list they have. They probably can't afford... The bye is so important for Geelong, I think, more so than any other team in this top 4 for me. The bye for Geelong is so important because they will need that rest because their list is... I think it's by far the oldest. If it's not, it seems like it's the oldest.
Yeah, they've got some old boys out there for sure, to say the least. So, looking at that, they're essentially playing a grand final against Port Adelaide.
Yep.
Because whoever loses that is done.
Yep.
And if they win from there, it's one of the greatest premierships I've ever seen.
Oh, it would be an absolutely insane run that you will talk about for decades to come.
Or Collingwood dump West Coast.
Ooh.
That's the only 2 outcomes I can realistically see altering that.
Yeah. Which would be, again, another massive, massive upset. And I think that will cause some questions for that West Coast team and coaching staff if they lose that elimination final.
I think we've shown our hand to be here. So I think Richmond's going to beat Brisbane. And I'm jumping ahead with this just in a wider context. So Richmond's going to beat Brisbane. West Coast's going to beat Collingwood. And then obviously we think that I mean, it probably is actually a bit of a... I think it's a bit closer to Geelong and Port than people think. I certainly came in thinking that Geelong was going to handle Port quite comfortably. But Collingwood looked good against Collingwood. Sorry, Port looked good against Collingwood. And Collingwood aren't a joke team.
No, they're not. And Port actually only played Wines and Boak at just over 70% game time, when they're normally up around 80-85. And so they essentially rested their two best midfielders against a team that has an absolutely insane midfield as well. So yeah, it is very, very scary actually for Geelong. It is a super important game against Port. Port as another, it's kind of two classic finals chokers coming up against each other, isn't it? Because these are two teams that have consistently managed to put together impressive regular seasons and then done nothing in the finals. So for at least one of these teams, it's going to be different this year.
That is true. Look, we'll move on to Richmond now. A team we've talked obviously at great length about. Go and check out Season 1, Episode 2 if you haven't already and you are a Tigers fan. Twin Peaks, yeah. I think we're going to have to win some kind of award for our naming of these episodes.
We definitely do.
But look, Richmond, in all seriousness, they're the winniest team in this competition.
They've done it time and time again, haven't they? Played super impressive football, adapted to many different styles, handled injuries so well. There's so much to like about the brand of footy that they play, and they look unshakable when they need to be. They really came out, I think, made a statement against West Coast a couple of weeks ago, which really sold me on this team as just the premiership favourite for me.
If they win this year, that's 3-4, and just missing potentially 2018. Where do they rank?
Well, they're way up there, aren't they? They're up there with your Hawthorn, I guess. 3 and 4 years. They're up there with your Geelong and your Hawthorn.
Well, Hawthorn did 3 and 4 years as well. You got to remember they just got the order a bit different to what Richmond have done.
Yeah, but just to be able to do it for so long is so impressive. But the most impressive thing for this Richmond team for me is that they're not showing any signs of slowing down.
Yeah.
They've got so many young players in that list still developing. Like we've talked about previously, they've got Lynch really coming into those shoes, filling Rewalt's role now as the number one forward, which means that Rewalt can take a step back and probably extend his career another couple of years, which is going to help them absolutely tremendously because, like we've talked about, who has two good key defenders to take both of them? West Coast Eagles and no one.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's a worry, I think, for the other teams in competition. I think Brisbane will be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
In this game.
I completely agree. I don't see how Lachie Neale is going to be able to dismantle this very, very well-oiled machine that is the Richmond Football Club.
You worry for Brisbane, and we'll come into them now. I think we're at the point where we can talk about them now. Do they have what it takes to really be a premiership contender? They've got everything to be a good team, but do they have what it takes to be that killer premiership side?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For me, I don't think so. They're very young. I'm very happy that they managed to continue on. We may be having some technical difficulties here. I'm very happy that they managed to continue on the success that they had last year. I think they were a very impressive team regular season, and they bowed out 0-2 in the finals, which was sad for them and all their supporters. Me as well. I loved watching them as a neutral. I thought they played some really good footy, and they have a very likeable list, I think, probably besides Mitch Robinson. And Eric Hipwood, obviously. But yeah, no, I think you're very worried. It's if they beat Richmond, I think it's probably only because it's going to be in Brisbane.
Yeah.
I don't think they have any chance if they were playing in Melbourne. So that is a huge boost for their chances, I think. But yeah, we'll have to see.
And the way the brackets work, if they want to win the fight, they're going to probably have to beat Richmond twice.
Yep.
You know,
who's going to be able to do that? Who's going to be able to? Yeah, I don't know.
They've almost got. I mean, I know what we said before about Geelong's being the bracket of death, but you'd probably rather play. I mean, I suppose the week off probably makes it a bit better for them, but you don't want to be playing Richmond twice in any sense.
No,
even a Richmond team has played that extra game. Because I don't think that's even that big of a factor this year, to be honest.
What was that?
The extra game, having to go through the semis as well, because I don't think the players will be as spent this year.
Well, yeah, well, shorter season, shorter quarters, still having the week off. There's a lot that's helped. There's a lot that's definitely helped, and also way less travel, right? Because of the way that this hub system has worked.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I would be inclined to agree that the team should be nowhere near as physically and even just mentally tired as they would normally be coming into a finals season. They've had a lot of time to sort of reset. So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. But I am very scared for Brisbane. I don't see them matching up well defensive. As great as Harris Andrews is, I think he's had a phenomenal season. And as excellent as the rebound role that Rich plays, who can kick 85 metres.
Birchall as well.
Yeah, and Birchall as well has a little niche in there. I think they're good defensively, but I don't think they're anywhere near as good as they need to be to take down a Richmond team that is essentially looking to carve their way into history.
Yeah. This is probably the segment we're going to have the most amount of time spent on. That's Port Adelaide. They've had a great season. I think no one would question they've been the surprise packet of the competition.
Yeah.
They've been phenomenal. They dismantled Richmond, which could end up being a key form reference. They have looked very good against a lot of the sides that they're most likely going to verse, the exception being Geelong, which obviously may come into play in the first week of the finals.
Yeah, which is unfortunately their first round matchup.
But they've got a really good list, I think, Paul. And I think before the All-Australian team, with guys like Darcy Byrne-Jones and that getting in, they've been a really underappreciated list as well.
I think they're a team that is very much the sum of its parts, as opposed to the parts individually. For me, aside from Boak, Charlie Dixon, who has been absolutely amazing this year, Wines, I think no one from their list stands out super, super highly to me as like, you know, a top in their position sort of player. But they work very, very well together, and they've managed to keep it up all year. So kudos to them.
And they're almost like anti Geelong in terms of the age of their list, aren't they? They've got a very young list, and of all the teams in this list, they're probably the one that improves the most naturally.
Yeah. Aside from losing Boak, which will probably happen in the next couple of years, I think he's getting on a bit, which will hurt them severely. But you're right, they have some incredible young talent in there. They have drafted very, very well these last couple of years.
But they've always drafted really well, Paul. And that's one thing I don't get enough credit for. They have a really good draft record over a long period of time.
Yeah, I agree. They've managed to find some real diamonds in the rough in these drafts. Even just they've got I don't know if you remember, he played last year, Willem Drew, who's a real handy forward pocket player and doesn't even get a game for him. So I mean, maybe Westhoff coming out and then Rosie developing more into that full forward role, or centre half forward, depending on where they decide to keep Dixon.
I think you play Georgiades as centre half forward though.
Yeah, that's true. Georgiades has been very impressive this year as well.
And he was hit or miss this season. We've got to remember the kid's 18.
Yeah. So much room to grow still.
And he's one where, unlike... he's lanky, but he's also not a 200cm lanky player.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily worry about him not having that natural body development as you might for guys like
But he's also showed strength a few times this year as well.
He's taken some great
impressively,
marks.
Yeah.
I mean, he needs to work on his goal kicking for sure.
Half the AFL does, though, to be fair.
Yeah, so we can't really pile on him too much for that. It's a bit of a group issue rather than just him. But, you know, if they were going to win a flag, they easily could do it this year. They've got a list where if they get a run in the first quarter, similar to the way Collingwood did against West Coast in 2018, they absolutely could stun an opponent early in the grand final and just hold on.
Yeah, they could, and I think the playing it in Brisbane's very good for them. Obviously not good if they come up against Brisbane, but playing a Melbourne-based team in Brisbane is so much better than playing a Melbourne-based team in Melbourne. So as much as it's going to suck not having this first round for them at Amy, because obviously they play amazing footy there, I think in the long run, if they manage to make a deep run at this grand final, it's gonna pay dividends to them. I think they can't be too disappointed with the fact that it's being played in Brisbane. No,
I completely agree. This is a massive opportunity for them to really make a statement to the AFL and potentially signal the beginning of a new dynasty. Now, what we'll do now, Jaden, is we'll have a look at the brackets and decide how we think it's going to play out.
Yeah.
So we'll start, first of all, with first versus fourth, which is Port Adelaide versus Geelong.
I think, for me, I probably have to go Port Adelaide this week. I think they've they're coming in off of some really good momentum at the end of the season, and I don't know if I've quite seen the mental fortitude of Geelong, where I can really back them here. I think Boker's been phenomenal too, and like I said, he played only 70% game time in the last game of the round. He's had a really good rest. I think he'll come out firing. Dixon is looking just about unstoppable for anyone in that Geelong defense. There is always the Dangerfield factor, which is very, very scary. Mitch Duncan and Menegola have had really, really good seasons too. But I think I'm picking Port in this first game. What about you?
The one thing I will say is that remember what happened last time these guys met. We watched the game together.
We did, yeah.
It was
the Hawkins show.
But more so than that, Port Adelaide had nothing going forward.
Yeah.
Dixon was... He may as well not have been there.
Yeah.
He may as well have been having a drink with us. Because he wasn't doing anything. He was really showing up that game, and a lot of the Port Adelaide players didn't stand up and get counted when they needed to. And I think that will really hurt them psychologically going into this game, especially because they're such a young side. Ken Hinkley's a fantastic coach. But, that stuff, you remember that stuff when you go on the field and you see the same guys that flogged you by 10 goals last time. So for that reason alone, and given the fact I don't think the lists are that different in terms of ability, I'm going to have to go with Geelong on this one.
Ooh, interesting. We've first game in and we've already got different picks.
We have.
Completely fair though. Like I said, I do remember that game. It was pretty bad to watch. I felt bad for Port, to be honest. Yeah.
And that was in Adelaide, was it not?
Yes, I think it was.
So does the Brisbane factor really help them in that regard then?
I think Geelong is the Melbourne-based team. It helps them against the least. Purely because I don't think Geelong rely on their home ground advantage as much as other... Not
in finals, anyway.
Yeah.
They don't get to play finals at their home ground.
Yeah.
So they may as well be playing in Melbourne or anywhere for Geelong. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So, based on that, we're going to have to do 2 different brackets here because I'm going with Geelong. I think they're going to do it.
Oh, yeah? Fair enough.
So, we'd have to do 2 different brackets now.
Well, we can do the same bracket, but we'll have different teams at that point.
Okay, so 5th versus 8th. I think we were both pretty happy with West Coast here.
Yeah. I don't think... besides some sort of miracle performance from Collingwood where I guess Grundy becomes some sort of anti-Nick Nat potion, I don't really see Collingwood manage... the West Coast have kind of been their voodoo team for a while, ever since that qualifying final in 2018. Where Collingwood pipped them. Since then, Eagles have had their number. So I think that's going to continue.
Unless they bring on some rookie to kneecap Jeremy McGovern in the back line, I can't... Especially with Collingwood's like a forward line.
Hearn and McGovern against no forwards...
Who scores the goals?
Is going to hurt you, yeah.
So I'm pretty happy with West Coast winning that game. I think we're both pretty happy with Bulldogs getting a hold of St Kilda in the elimination final. I don't think anyone was debating that. Brisbane-Richmond.
I'm going Richmond.
Yeah, I can't disagree.
As much as I think it's good for Brisbane to be playing in Brisbane, this Richmond team, I think it's going to steamroll their side of the bracket of the finals all the way to the grand final. Maybe they get some jitters in the prelim or the grand final and don't win it all, maybe. But I don't think they're going to struggle in this game at least. I think they're going to come out and absolutely blitz Brisbane.
That's fair. Okay, semi-finals time now, so second week of the finals. We'll do our little alternative one here. So you're going with Geelong versus West Coast.
Yeah.
Who are you going with in this hypothetical matchup?
I think West Coast beats them.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Brisbane?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
I just think if Geelong don't get up against Port, they're going to be mentally shot. And that's one thing that West Coast really preys on. They really play... If you don't think you can beat West Coast, you will not beat West Coast.
Yeah, I can understand that. One thing that I think is really selling me on Geelong this year, and why they're actually, you're going to see them progress probably a bit further in this bracket for me than people think, is because they don't have home finals. So this affects them the least out of anybody because they don't play home finals ever.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, but also I just have to bring up every single final series they've played for the last however many years.
Yeah, but how many of those exits weren't at their home ground?
Yeah, look, completely fair.
That's my logic behind this, is that, this is a team that is used to getting the short end of the stick, having to play their finals an hour up the road at Melbourne. So does it really matter to them they're going to be playing their home finals in Brisbane? To me, no.
Yeah, I don't think it matters as much. I just don't know if they are as good a team as people might think.
I think it definitely hurts Richmond and West Coast more.
Yeah.
And it arguably hurts them back on par with Port Adelaide. Maybe a slight edge to Geelong, but I don't think there's much between those two. Because I think Port have really shown some good footy up in Brisbane when they've had the chance to play there.
Yeah.
So I don't mind Port Adelaide playing their finals in Brisbane the same way I don't mind Geelong playing their finals in Brisbane. But yeah, for Richmond to be stopped this year, I think that it's going to be the fact they have to play 3, potentially 4 games in unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I'm going to tip Geelong again to beat West Coast.
Whee.
I really think Geelong will go far this year. I'm really happy to be on Geelong's banner.
Yeah, okay. So you think even if they... Because I think that was massive. That Port-Collingwood game had so many implications for me. I wouldn't have even been that upset for Port if they had have kind of played it at half... not necessarily tried their hardest. Maybe rested a few stars because playing West Coast in... If they do lose to Geelong, or if Geelong lose to Port, I just think that West Coast team is going to be scary. That's my issue with it.
I don't doubt that at all. I think that it's going to be a very close game between Geelong and West Coast. I can just see it maybe swinging on the fact that, Hawkins has that edge.
Oh, he definitely has. He definitely has a capacity
at the moment.
To do it. We've watched him take over at least 3 games this year, I think, out of 17 too. So, which means he's probably due to take over at least 1 finals game if they play 3 at least. Yeah,
so I'm gonna really stick with Geelong here. I think they've got the capacity to do it. So this final now is going to be, according to our bracket, Bulldogs versus Brisbane. I think on paper you have to go with the Lions. But it wouldn't be the biggest shock of the finals if the Bulldogs got them.
No, it wouldn't be. Like I said, I will comfortably back Brisbane. It's in Brisbane. They have looked like the better team all year.
And I also think Bulldogs play better down in Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Or up in Gold Coast, as it would be.
Well, most people really do because they play against Gold Coast there.
Look, I'll be honest, it helps. It helps. When you play against 22 drunk pigeons, it usually results in some more wins for you.
Exactly.
But, Brisbane should be dealing with them. So that's our semi-finals wrap.
Yeah.
Prelim finals, according to my bracket, it's Geelong versus Brisbane. You've got a team that maybe might not be ready for finals versus a team that never really performs in finals.
So for me, I'm picking Brisbane in that game, if that's how it happens.
All right.
I think I'm just not sold on Geelong the same way that you are this year. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see this team make a deep run at the flag. I'm sick of Richmond. I'm sick of West Coast.
It is boring, isn't it?
It is boring. Let's get someone else in there. Plus, I'd love to see it for Danger, who I think cops a lot of flack for a team that doesn't perform. That's not necessarily his fault. I think he's done more than his fair share for this Geelong side.
He has. He has.
So yeah, I would love to see Danger make a real run, but I just am not completely sold on them. And I think Brisbane take that in Brisbane.
Look, that's fair. I'm going to stick with Geelong here for similar reasons I've said before. But obviously, the whole not playing your finals or home advantage is pretty severely mitigated here. I'm more than happy to acknowledge that. Again, though, I just think that Brisbane can get shut out of the game going forward, more so than Geelong can, because Hawkins is still going to kick 2 goals, at least, and in a low-scoring affair.
Unless you put a multi on.
Unless I put a multi on. Yes, don't expect to see Lachie Neale touch the ball more than 18 times against Geelong in that game, because of course he won't. Because why would he do that for me? Most disposals group never. So I think Geelong win it. I think they've probably got a fitness advantage on Brisbane for me right now. I think they look like they're more ready to go than Brisbane have.
Yeah, I would agree.
Brisbane were poor against St Kilda a couple of weeks ago. They've been a couple of games. They haven't had an impressive lead-up game, so I can look back at that Geelong-Port game and say, there's my form reference for where Geelong are at. That's the game I can look at and say, put it against Richmond, there's my form reference for them. They've come and done this. Richmond and Geelong had a great game as well. You've got these little form references I don't think Brisbane have.
Yeah. I don't know why. Actually, now that you've brought that up, I don't know why I am so sold on them. I think it's probably just the fact that the whole final series is in Brisbane, and they managed to really back up that performance they had last year. I was completely unsold on the team, and it showed. They bowed out 0-2. I think that's where they belonged. in that final series. As good as their regular season was, they weren't ready for finals. And I just hope that they are this year. And I also hope that playing it at their home ground is going to give them that little extra kick.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I just think they've been very consistent this year, but I'd almost rather a team that peaks than a consistent team in the finals.
Yeah.
Because at least if you're a consistent team that goes down, that's your ceiling.
Yeah.
But if you're a team that have peaks that goes down, you can say, okay, it wasn't your day.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's more excuses for Geelong this year than there is Brisbane. As weird as that is, despite the fact that Geelong choked for years and years and years, it's Brisbane's whole final series in their backyard.
Yeah, that's very, very true. As much as I'm backing them, there's also a lot of pressure on them because the cards have fallen very well for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that may play on their minds a bit, the coaching staff and the players, because they're really set up for something special here. And if they don't do it, I don't know if they'll manage to get another chance as good, at least during this Richmond era.
One point I want to raise before we move on that we spoke about off air is that if you brought in a man from Ethiopia and said, right, this is the AFL, this is where everything is, who's going to win the grand final this year? They'd see the team that's having the whole final series in their backyard and say, right, well, they're going to win.
Yeah, they would. I think so, yeah. Well,
especially given they're second on the ladder.
Yeah, every single game's been played at Brisbane, and this Brisbane team is second only on percentage, might I add.
So they've got the right to home finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're going to... I don't know what they're going to do. Have they made a decision on Adelaide games and stuff like that yet? Has that been confirmed?
I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure.
It depends on the time of recording what the final decision is on that. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It honestly could come out between recording and release.
Yeah, it could do.
So we'll have to wait and see. We'll kind of wrap this up because I'm conscious of time now. I have Richmond versus West Coast. You have Richmond versus West Coast as well. This is one we've gone despite the different ways of getting there. I think Richmond get it.
Yeah, I think Richmond smash them.
They smash them.
I think West Coast could come out with some real heart and potentially do it, but that is not the outcome that I would be betting on. I would be betting on this Richmond team to just rampage through. They just seem to turn it on for finals.
They do.
They really have looked unstoppable at certain points. They are almost, for me, like the epitome of, like you said, those peak teams.
Yeah.
Where if Richmond are at their peak, I do not see any other team in this top 8 or in the competition playing at their peak who could even hold a candle to Richmond.
That's fair. So you're going with a Brisbane-Richmond grand final. I'm going with Richmond-Geelong. Who do you have to win?
Richmond.
So I'm going Geelong. I know it's a big call.
You are sold on Geelong.
I am sold on Geelong purely because this is their last chance, and you don't want to underestimate a desperate team. I understand that Richmond have a higher peak. I understand they're probably the better team, and I definitely respect that. And honestly, they'll probably make me look silly and win by 10 goals. But I think that Geelong have a good enough list to make it competitive, and if it gets tight, the key players like Ablett, like Dangerfield, to have their first chance, well, certainly for Dangerfield and for Ablett in many years, to stand up and be counted. I think that's where they make the difference.
Yeah, I can't really... Like I said, I just for some reason have this feeling in my gut that Geelong are going to do it again. But everything you're saying makes complete sense. And I hope they really dig deep and get something done in this final series. Because you're right, they are desperate.
And I think it's one thing that makes this podcast great as well, is you've got Geelong going in straight sets. I've got them winning the flag. And we could both justify our reasons and back up why. And it's two completely different thought trends as well.
Yeah.
You know, I can't ignore Geelong's history of not winning, but I also can't ignore the fact that over the last 18, 24 months, they've had periods where they've been the best team in the competition.
A lot of periods too, not just every now and again. There's been a few 3-4 week periods where you're like, this team looks absolutely incredible.
They flogged the minor premiers this year. Absolutely flogged them. They've been competitive against Richmond. And I just think, again, that whole not being at the MCG... If it's at the MCG, Richmond win by 10 goals. I'm happy to accept that. But I think the chaos ball that is the grand final being at the Gabba, maybe even in fact it's a night grand final as well, maybe that does something to Richmond.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't get them in that mentality. Because remember, Geelong haven't made a grand final in years.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a different environment. It's a different ball game. Richmond have what they're used to doing on grand final. That's not going to be there for them. It's almost...
Yeah, Richmond must almost be ritualistic with their finals these days
with
how much they've played. Exactly, yeah.
So Geelong are $5.50 to win the premiership. I'm not saying chuck the mortgage on it,
That's a J-Dart bet. That's a J-Dart certified bet right there.
but Adam Shaw most disposals Group A, Lockie Neal most disposals Group A, Geelong to win the premiership. That is your bet of the finals.
Oh, yeah. Don't do that, folks. Do not do that.
Gamble responsibly and don't put Group A's in your multi. I've finally seen the error of my ways.
Thank you.
Alright, well look, Jen, that wraps up our final special of the Darting Around podcast. We'll be back with more episodes being pumped out soon, but thank you so much for joining me again.
No worries. Had a great time.
I'm glad as always, and we'll see you next time on the Darting Around podcast.